Bob and I met at Bates College, and then I had to pursue him for about 8 years while he was on his ventures, and we married in 1958. And this is Bob. Unfortunately, his Parkinson's disease keeps him from coming along with me. So this is a one-person show, but he and I have discussed at length over many years our philanthropy and have come to an agreement, and so I feel very comfortable speaking for both of us today. Bob had always intended to go into education. That was his first love from way back when. I never wanted to be a teacher, and I didn't take one education course in college. I was a sociology, psychology major, as was he, and I worked for the YWCA for 5 years in New Jersey and in New Haven, Connecticut, before I went into teaching. Our schedules were quite different. My work focused on weekends, and we just didn't match very well. So he said, if we're going to make anything of this relationship, you're going to have to become a teacher. So in those days, they were hiring warm bodies in Connecticut under the emergency certification program. So Bob arranged an interview for me with Paul Birch, the superintendent then, and I had a job before I even took an education course. So I started in 1956 at Braeburn School, which was brand new at the time. And before we got to Braeburn, I was at Sedgwick for, about a half a year, and on double sessions. So I thought I had died and gone to heaven because I went to school at 8 o'clock, finished at noon, and had the whole afternoon to prepare whatever was necessary. The other thing was, in my Y work, I had to recruit the clients and the volunteer leaders. And at school, I came every morning, and there were the children waiting for me. So it was a real contrast, and I loved every minute of it. Our lives centered around education, and as Bob moved up the ladder to eventually becoming principal at Hall High School, we had lots of contact with people from other countries who came to visit the school, and so we did a lot of entertaining and got to know those people very well, and still keep in touch with some of them. There were exchange teachers which enriched West Hartford and gave us an opportunity to visit them in their places of work. I liked the junior high school age, and I would have to say that I did it during the golden years. Things are very different now, and I don't know how I would cope with cell phones and all the issues that young people have to deal with nowadays. So I think I had my career during the best of times. When we both retired in 1990, 2 weeks later, we were on the plane to Korea for 5 years at the international school in Seoul, Korea. So that was an exciting adventure. And to be honest, if we had known what was ahead of us, we might have retired earlier to try some other places around the world. Bob started his love of travel with a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship to England. He studied at the University of Birmingham and traveled all throughout Europe that year. Then when I was expecting him to come home for the summer, he had the opportunity to take a group of 20 older teenagers from all over Europe on a boat trip to South Africa, where they attended a youth conference in Durban. And so he came home the day before school was to open in West Hartford for his first day, and was actually a day late. So his love of travel started back then, and then the bug bit me too, and we have traveled ever since we got married in 1958. We're both only children, and we had responsibility for both of our sets of parents while they were living. But in between, we got to sneak away and saw some really interesting parts of the world that we wouldn't feel comfortable traveling to now, like Iran, like Afghanistan. That was a highlight for us at the time, but I don't think we do it right now. My favorite place in the whole world is Hong Kong. I am fascinated with the harbor there. We loved Africa. We liked Central America. It's hard to pinpoint. Everything becomes a favorite. I have to say our volunteer work goes back a long way. We have done very little of it in more recent years, but both of us were active in our church in West Hartford Center at the time. Bob was very active on the YMCA board. He was on the board at American School for the Deaf. I was on the Y board also. And of course, we're tied up a lot with activities at Hall High School. You know, we knew about the Hartford Foundation from hearing of other funds that were established there, but our relationship was sort of distant from the foundation until Bob's retirement gift, which is what really got us started with the Hartford Foundation. And it was Bob's vision that it would be nice to have a fund at Hall that would provide support for kids away from the school on trips and projects. And for those who couldn't afford to go, having a source of support would be very desirable. And that's what the Robert E. Dunn Fund is really all about. The Hartford Foundation helped us to spell out what we were hoping for, and they did a very good job of that. And I think they have managed it very, very well ever since. I think the first one that really got us going was contributing a guest house at Bates College. Both of us had a very good experience at Bates. For me, it was what kind of got me up and going. And I really appreciate the 4 years that I spent there. Bob took students' debates often as candidates, and they could stay in the dorms. He stayed in a little room in one of the buildings, which was available for overnight guests. And all of a sudden that room disappeared and it didn't exist anymore. So Bob came up with the idea of proposing that we give a guest house to Bates. They accepted the offer, gave us a choice of what we could do. Eventually, we took a house on the campus, and the college renovated it, and it is a 5-room B&B kind of guest house. Each room has a private bath and common rooms too on the first floor. That happened in 2000, Bob's 50th reunion year, and my 50th reunion year. The project was completed and the house was dedicated in 2001. So it's been going ever since. And we can tell that the house is being used because the steps need painting often. And we've gotten very good vibes about how the college uses the house. And it really encouraged us to continue our philanthropy while we're living and can enjoy what is happening. And then came the other funds at the Hartford Foundation. We liked what was happening to the Robert E. Dunn Fund, and so with Bob's connection at ASD, we decided we would like to do something similar for them. So there is a similar fund at ASD. They started first with the Up Close program, taking students to Washington to learn about the system there, visiting the representatives and the senators from Connecticut. They have also participated in the international sports programs. They have done work in the area of drama. They have done individual trips to Washington, not connected with Up Close, but on their own. So their program has been diversified too, as has Hall's. Well, at first it started out with English as a second language students going to Washington. And that happened for several years. Then it started to broaden out a little bit, and most recently there have been trips to China with groups, and we support that wholeheartedly because of having been to China maybe a half a dozen times ourselves. We certainly think that's a place for young people to see before it changes any more than it has already. I think there isn't anything like going abroad and seeing another culture firsthand early on in your life to make an impression, and to see how things are different, but also how things are the same. When you see these smiling faces, it doesn't matter whether they're American or Chinese, they're smiles of friendship. But we wanted to open it out a little bit more to other than Hall High School and American School for the Deaf, and include young people in the Hartford area. And that fund so far has supported the work of the Boys and Girls Clubs and their leadership programs to develop young leadership for the future. And it can be at any organization, the Y, or any place that is encouraging young people to take on responsibility for leadership. There are a couple of other projects that we have going too. One is the Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship Program, which provides a one-year scholarship for college graduates to study abroad in a country of their choice, in an area that interests them. And Bob had that program himself in 1952, and it made a real impression on him. This program has been going for, I believe, 5 or 6 years, so we have gotten to know at least 6 people who have benefited from this scholarship. And the current one is from West Hartford, and she's a gal who graduated from Hall, who's studying public health in London. She emails frequently, and so we're keeping up with her as to what she's doing. One of the young men was from West Hartford. He attended Taft School and graduated from Annapolis. He studied for a year in London also, and his major was Arabic studies. And currently he's deployed in North Africa and using his Arabic studies. 2 girls, one from Conard and one from East Hartford, studied in Buenos Aires. And one is working now in Ecuador with artisans who are making and selling their handiwork for profit and for reinvesting in the program. And another girl is going to be starting her own business with a partner in Washington, D.C. to sell items that are made from various fabrics. We have a fund at the University of Hartford, which is for study abroad. They use it for some short-term grants and some longer-term grants. Students can go for either 3 or 4 weeks, or they can go for a semester. And we have gotten to meet some of those students as well. And it's interesting to see what they are doing and what their study meant to them. I feel that that is the best way for them to get bitten by the travel bug and hopefully see more than just the U.S.